Russia's foreign minister accidentally revealed that the Kremlin's territorial demands go far beyond what anyone has been negotiating. On January 14, 2026, Sergei Lavrov stood at a press conference in Moscow and used one word that changed everything about these peace talks: Novorossiya. Most people outside Russia have never heard that word, but they need to, because it reveals that Russia is not demanding 4 regions, or even 5, but 8. What follows is a breakdown of exactly what Lavrov said, what Novorossiya actually means in the Kremlin's vocabulary, and why this completely undermines the peace framework that has been on the table for months. Understanding why Lavrov's statement matters requires looking at what has actually been proposed. A 28-point peace plan emerged in November 2025 from negotiations led by Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, with input from Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Jared Kushner. The groundwork for this plan came from a meeting between Witkoff and Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev in Miami on October 24, 2025. The territorial provisions went like this. Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk would be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States, while Kherson and Zaporizhzhia would be frozen along the current line of contact with de facto Russian recognition. 5 regions total would remain under Russian control or occupation, consisting of Crimea plus the 4 oblasts Russia illegally annexed in 2022. And here is the part that matters for what comes next. The plan also required Russia to return territories it controls outside these 5 regions, which meant everyone assumed 5 regions represented Russia's maximum demand. Other major provisions filled out the agreement. Ukraine's military would shrink to 600,000 personnel, down from 880,000, and permanent NATO membership would be off the table, requiring Ukraine to amend its constitution to reflect that reality. $100 billion in frozen Russian assets would fund Ukraine's reconstruction, with the United States receiving 50% of the profits. Zelensky announced by December 2025 that 90% of the plan had been agreed upon, and negotiations appeared to be moving forward. That changed when Lavrov opened his mouth. On January 14, 2026, Sergei Lavrov held a press conference in Moscow after talks with Namibia's Minister of International Relations. His exact words deserve attention. They understand perfectly well that without resolving the issue related to the fate of people living in Crimea, Novorossiya, and Donbass, who categorically reject the Kyiv regime, having expressed their desire to return to Russia, without resolving this issue, nothing will work either. The phrasing reveals everything. He did not say Crimea and the 4 annexed regions. His words were Crimea, Novorossiya, and Donbass, as if these are 3 separate things. To the Kremlin, they are. Novorossiya, or New Russia, is a term borrowed from the Russian Empire that refers to territories conquered from the Ottoman Empire during the 18th century. Putin himself defined what he means by the term back in April 2014, right after annexing Crimea. 8 regions fall under this definition according to Putin's own words, and the Kremlin's repeated usage of the term. The list includes not just the 4 annexed oblasts Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson, but also Kharkiv Oblast, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, Mykolaiv Oblast, and Odesa Oblast. The Institute for the Study of War assessed Lavrov's statement and concluded that Novorossiya is a fictional region that Kremlin officials often claim is integral to Russia. None of this is new rhetoric from Lavrov either. He has previously referenced Odesa and Mykolaiv as cities founded by Russia, laying the rhetorical groundwork for territorial claims that go far beyond any peace plan currently being discussed. Looking at a map reveals why this matters strategically. Russian control over all of Novorossiya would cut Ukraine off completely from the Black Sea, and Odesa, Ukraine's largest port city, would be gone. The entire southern coast would belong to Russia. Land is not the only thing at stake here. Making Ukraine economically unviable as an independent state is the real goal. A landlocked Ukraine dependent on its neighbors for all maritime trade would become a fundamentally different country than the one that exists today. What makes Lavrov's timing even more telling is the Institute for the Study of War's assessment that his comments were likely an attempt to set conditions ahead of a possible upcoming meeting between U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, former senior advisor Jared Kushner, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Just as everyone thought a deal was close, Russia signaled that its actual demands are much larger than what was on the table. Witkoff and Kushner have already sat across from Putin once before. December 2, 2025 brought them to the Kremlin for approximately 5 hours of talks that included Putin, Witkoff, Kushner, Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev, and Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov. Witkoff had met Putin 5 times previously in Russia, but this marked Kushner's first participation in talks with the Russian president. There was no breakthrough from the meeting. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov told reporters that a compromise option was not found, though he called the talks very useful and constructive. Bloomberg reported on January 14, 2026, the same day Lavrov made his Novorossiya comments, that Witkoff and Kushner are seeking to travel to Moscow again to meet with Putin in the near future. American envoys are preparing for another round of negotiations, while Russia's foreign minister publicly states that the Kremlin wants territories that are not even part of the discussion. President Trump has made his position clear on who he blames for blocking progress. An Oval Office interview with Reuters on January 14, 2026 produced a striking moment when Trump was asked directly who was holding up peace negotiations. His answer was a single word: Zelensky. He elaborated that he thought Putin was ready to make a deal, and that he thought Ukraine was less ready to make a deal. He added that they have to get President Zelensky to go along with it, and that he thinks the president is having a hard time getting there. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the opposite 3 days earlier, on January 11, 2026. She said the onus was on Russia to show that it was interested in peace. Kremlin press secretary Dmitry Peskov responded within hours, saying Moscow agrees with the American president's assessment that Kyiv is blocking a peace deal. The question nobody in Washington seems to be asking is how Zelensky can be blamed for blocking a deal when Russia's own foreign minister just revealed that Russia's demands exceed anything that has actually been negotiated. The scale of this conflict puts Lavrov's expanded demands into perspective. British intelligence reported in January 2026 that Russia has suffered approximately 1.213 million casualties since the full-scale invasion began, a figure that includes both killed and wounded. December 2024 alone saw Russia losing an estimated 1,570 soldiers per day. The single deadliest day came on December 19, 2024, when 2,200 Russian troops were killed or wounded. Independent verification from BBC and Mediazona has confirmed over 155,000 Russian soldiers killed by name. Their estimate suggests this captures only 45 to 65% of actual deaths. One statistic from the Center for Strategic and International Studies captures the scale. Russia has suffered roughly 5 times as many fatalities in Ukraine as in all Russian and Soviet wars combined between World War II and February 2022. Staggering losses have not scaled back Russia's ambitions. Lavrov's statement makes clear they are expanding them. Retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges served as commanding general of U.S. Army Europe, and his assessment of this conflict has remained consistent. He says Russia cannot defeat Ukraine. After 11.5 years, they have been unable to do more than where they are right now, which is about 19% of Ukrainian territory. There is no evidence that the Russian army is capable of breaking through or breaching Ukrainian defenses. On the current American approach, he says the United States has clearly taken the side of the Kremlin here, and this is all about business for Trump's administration, his family, and some associates. On security guarantees, he is most direct. If there is no NATO membership, then we have to be honest. There is no security guarantee for Ukraine unless we send a lot of well-trained, well-armed soldiers, including Europeans and Americans, to Ukraine at the invitation of Ukraine. Hodges has argued consistently that NATO membership is the only genuine security guarantee for Ukraine. The situation now stands like this. A 28-point peace plan was drafted, and 90% was reportedly agreed. American envoys have met with Putin multiple times, and Trump is pressuring Zelensky to make a deal. Russia's foreign minister then stands at a podium and casually mentions Novorossiya, a term that encompasses 8 Ukrainian regions, not 4 or 5. The Institute for the Study of War's conclusion deserves repeating. Lavrov's statement is proof that Russia's demands are much larger than what was initially outlined in the 28-point plan. Zelensky being difficult is not the issue here. Ukraine blocking peace is not what is happening. Russia is signaling that no matter what gets negotiated, the Kremlin believes it is entitled to half of Ukraine's territory, including cities and regions that Russian forces have never occupied and likely never could occupy. The real question is not whether Zelensky will accept a deal. The question is whether any deal is possible when Russia keeps moving the goalposts. Lavrov said the quiet part out loud. Whether anyone in Washington was listening remains to be seen. Subscribe for more analysis on the war in Ukraine if you found this breakdown useful. Your thoughts in the comments are always welcome. Thanks for watching.